One of the reasons that councils, and by extension the government, get a lot of stick from the general populace is due to planning permission. And the most common way that people get annoyed by councils with regards to planning permission is house extensions. And people think, whose business is it if I stick an extra bathroom or bedroom or, living space onto the edge of my house or my property? Why is it such a big deal? Who are they to say what I can and can't do? And on a micro level, that point of view makes sense. Nobody really cares if Johnny or Jane do a little bit of extending to their property, and nobody cares really until you have to factor in the macro point of view. If you look at things from the big picture, it suddenly starts to make sense why councils are very reluctant to give people carte blanche to do whatever they want with their properties. And you see a good example of that at the moment with the housing crisis, as it's termed, where lots of people just can't afford property anymore. And it doesn't take much justification or explanation to say why adding an extension to a property moves it up the cost scale. Where I live, for example, it's your good old-fashioned cul-de-sac, bunch of houses down a cul-de-sac. I don't know, there's probably about 30 of them in all. Well, about 50% of them have had an extension. So 50% of them are now worth more than the other 50%. So when the house that I live in was purchased, this one currently has no extension, but an extension has been desired. Just never got round to applying for it really, or doing it. It's one of those things that always gets put on the back burner really. Not me, but the owners. When they first bought the property, it was the kind of property that suited the position they were in at the time. X number of kids, X annual income. So now, when similar people in today's age are in that similar position, our streets' housing stock for that particular position in life has now been halved, because half the property is now too expensive. It's at the next price band up. And so all the facilities and design of the place where I live was originally designed with a certain number of this kind of, our kind of property size in mind. So as one kind of small example, if all the properties get extended and the affordability goes up, the kind of people who are purchasing those properties are more likely to have more cars, or they're more likely to send their kids to a private school rather than the local public school. And if there's one thing I can assure you, that there's more cars out there than there ever was before. It's quite hazardous just getting out the cul-de-sac sometimes. And so when you get to the macro level and you expand our little cul-de-sac all over the entire country, it's quite easy to imagine how this contributes a bit to the old housing crisis. Because 50% of the properties in the country that fit a certain category of person have all been moved up a few price bands. And that's the thing about house extensions. People never extend smaller, do they? I don't even know what the word is for extending smaller. Downsizing, maybe? Do people downsize their properties? It's just not what happens. It's somebody moves into a property, they only think about making it bigger. They never think about making it smaller, do they? And as per usual, the answer always just seems to be, well, we'll build more houses that suit that particular character. But of course then people move into those houses and over time they extend those and the problem continues. More and more houses get built and they're all getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's just a huge clump of housing stock that's all too big and useless. Eventually down the line, in a few hundred years, the whole country will just be a graveyard of unoccupied mini mansions. They'll all be being torn down to build tenements if they're not already converted into houses of multiple occupancy. And as per usual, it's the middle that gets squished. Just the normal nice house with the correct number of bedrooms, the correct number of bathrooms, or adequate number of each, in an adequately sized plot. They're all getting made too big, and then once they're too big, they're converted into tiny little things. Maybe things will work out if there's ever a housing recession, and the prices start tumbling down and down and down, which they probably never will, but you never know. And then you can maybe buy yourself a mini mansion on the cheap. But then people don't realise that having a big property is not always the best thing in the world. It's a lot more cleaning, a lot more repairs, a lot more things that can go wrong, a lot more decorating, a lot more rooms to fill with junk and then need emptying of all their junk. So you can kind of understand really why councils, generally speaking, would rather people didn't mess around with the size of their properties, because on the macro level it does kind of make everything a bit more messy for everybody. Again, it's not really just about why can't I do this tiny little thing on my tiny little piece of land. But alas, that seems to be the way of things at the moment. Politics generally is becoming a bit more myopic, a bit more micro rather than macro, and the collected voices for reducing the power of planning permission seem to be increasing, while at the same time there's loads of pressure on the government because supposedly it's the government's fault for the housing crisis. It's all a bit of a tragedy really, I suppose. I'm not sure what can be done about it. I mean, if this property that I live in, if we wanted an extension, it would kind of make sense. It's like having two different brains, isn't it, you know? Well, I want to be able to do this, but bloody hell, if everybody did it, you know what I mean? And do you want to be the sacrificial lamb? Do you want to hold on to your principles and not have the extra bathroom that everybody else of your standard is currently enjoying? Do you want to essentially impoverish yourself on principle? Where will that principle be in 50 years' time, you know? But yeah, I think, generally speaking, we've lost a lot of respect in this department, and I don't know why. I suppose that some people view it as communism, you know, or some kind of lefty meddling by do-gooders or whatever it is, I don't know. But it's not really political, it's just a common sense thing. The natural market forces will create just lots of very big houses and lots of tiny houses. The middle will inevitably get squished. And it's the middle bit that's the most enjoyable. That's what makes society nice.